Welcome to another edition of Living with Purpose. Today I have Neha Krishna, who comes from this incredible family. She's actually from the family, the Shastri family, who was the second Prime Minister of India. She is a graduate of one of India's prestigious business schools. She did her management there, came to the US, has worked at Microsoft, at Meta, at Amazon, ran Google's Brain Trust, something which had to do with hiring PhD employees for Google, and has been in this sector in the tech industry for over 16 years. The reason I actually know her is because she's an influencer. So I'm so thrilled. And she's a businesswoman. She has her own fashion line, which she has created. So please join me in welcoming Neha to our podcast. Neha, welcome.
Thank you so much, Akhtar. I just don't even know where to start. This is such a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much.
Let's start growing up. What was it like?
So, I always come back to this. I have this sense of privilege, right? There's a lot of privilege attached to my background. My father, was head of unit of India, United Nations. All my uncles, everybody's into politics. And I was born and raised in Jaipur. Like a typical, very conservative family. Most women in my house never worked. They never even I have this background. I worked at so many companies. When I first told my parents that I'm going to be working in corporate America, they weren't very happy.
Yeah.
They're like, why do you have to work? This is not why we give you all this education. You're supposed to be taking care of your house and your kids. And it was a very different. So to break that and come out to be known for myself was a journey in itself.
So let's just go back to childhood, right? So here you have your father is a UNIDO, is the United Nations Industrial Development Organization based in India. Clearly, you're being exposed to a international community of people that are actually going through the UN offices there. Your uncles are in politics. So you're getting exposed to this tremendous sense of both people that are trying to make the world a better place and India a better place. So just talk a little bit about what was it like growing up there and those conversations.
For my father, he traveled the world. He had a lot of the Southeast Asia under him. So he would travel all the time. And my mother would also be traveling with him. So I was partially raised by my grandma and then a staff of people in the house. And then I went to the boarding as well. So I was in the boarding for a little bit. We had a joint family. There were people coming into our house after all day long. Being part of this political family, you have people coming in all day long. They're like diplomats and bureaucrats. And you sort of grow up with people and you have a large crowd of people all the time. And so I remember a typical lunch or dinner would be we would have, when my mom would say, we have some people coming over for dinner, it would basically mean we have 25 people over for dinner tonight. And that was sort of the way of living. There was every day, there was so much food being cooked because there were so many people coming in to see my dad or my uncles, and we had a joint family. So it was that sort of a setup. We are amongst all my cousins and brothers. We have more brothers than sisters. So I grew up with a large, cousins and all that, but more brothers. And even though there was so much education behind the family, everybody in my household is very educated. My mother is a PhD in botany and zoology. My father, IITian himself, and he did, he was in the administrative services and everything. But for me, they thought that education is something that you should have, not because you're going to be using to work, but because it's nice to have. You should be educated, and that's what you should do, perhaps if you need that. But when I came to America and I told them that I'd like to work, their first thing was, you have to take care of the family. So they were very conservative in their thinking.
Right. Before we talk about America, let's just talk a little bit about your school.
I think again, growing up in Jaipur is sort of like you are sort of like a pseudo royal. Everybody, especially in the MGD as well, there were a lot of royal family influences. So a lot of my friends came from royal families or from industrialist families. There's a lot of influence and privilege
Right.
to that school. And, again, Jaipur as a city itself, it's conservative of that. It's not like it's not a tier one city. So it's not like a Delhi, Bombay. And it's still conservative. It was an all girls school that I went to. And, I still am in touch with most of my friends, most of my buddies there. And generally speaking, I think that most of the girlfriends that I grew up with, they are still there. Most people never leave. Most people never leave the town. They're still in Jaipur.
So what did you study at school?
I was a commerce major.
So you studied commerce and then you decided to go.
Yeah, I went to college. I went to college of Maharaja Sairaj University, Baroda, where I did my bachelor's in home design. So I did interior designing.
Oh, nice.
My major. Yeah, so I was a design major there. And then, I sort of like always had this creative streak to myself that I like designing. But I wanted to go out and do a little bit more. And so I was like, okay, I am going to be applying to B school. And I was contemplating between marketing and HR, but then I majored in HR. So I went to Symbiosis Institute of Business Management. I majored in HR, and that is.
So from Baroda, you went to Pune.
I went to Pune, yes.
Right? So your family, even though it was conservative, actually allowed you to go out of state to study on 2 occasions.
Yes, because my father was based abroad. My parents weren't based in Jaipur or Delhi. My father was posted in the Gulf for a little bit, and he would travel all the time. So, and the reason why, I wanted to go to Delhi myself to study either for design or for business, but my parents thought that Baroda is a much safer city for women as compared to Delhi. So the idea was to go to Baroda because it's a safer city. It's a smaller place, and it seemed like a little bit cozier than a Delhi or a Bombay. Because all my siblings and all my family, my cousins, everybody up there, they all went abroad. All my brothers went abroad to study. I was the only child in the house that did not study abroad for their bachelor's and master's. My brothers all went abroad. They all went to London or wherever to study. But again, because of the conservative streak, my father thought that it would be better to keep me in a place like Pune or Baroda, which is safer for women, and not send me along to London or someplace.
So you finish your master's, your MBA at Symbiosis, and did you work in India or did you just come to the US?
Yeah, I worked shortly. I just worked for about 6 months I worked at ICICI Bank for about 6 months in HR. And then soon after, Rish and I got together and I got married and I moved abroad. I moved to Seattle.
So you got married, and then where did you move?
So literally my courtship was about 3 months under Rish and I. It was a very traditional, typical arranged marriage. And I got married and I moved to Seattle. So Seattle is the only place where I've lived since my wedding. And Rish was here for a very long time. So he went to USC and then he was an intern at Microsoft. So when I got married, Rish was at Microsoft then. And so when I came up there, I came on an H4 visa.
Correct. It is a spouse visa for those of our listeners, and it really does not allow me to work.
Yes, it did not allow me to work. So I had all of this education, this desire to be known for who I am and not for my family, not because I'm so-and-so's granddaughter and daughter and all of that. So I had this deep desire to be known for myself. And so, and I had no work permit. So I remember casually I was at a coffee shop and I was just, I like to chat. You can tell. I like to talk, So I started talking to this random person who owned a small sort of a staffing company in Bellevue. And we started chatting and I said, well, I don't have a work permit, but I could learn the ropes of the work and I wouldn't charge you a penny. And he thought that it was a very sweet deal because he didn't have to pay me a penny and I would work. And so that's really how I got my first job in America. I was not paid for almost about a year. I would work 40 hours a week, but I wasn't getting paid. and he would just give me some like vouchers and coupons and things like that. But I wasn't getting like actual cash payment, and I worked like that because I had to show some sort of work permit, some sort of work experience, so to say,
Right.
Because I have to ever apply to a bigger company, it's sort of a vicious cycle. They don't give you a job because you don't have experience. Because you don't have experience, you don't get the job.
Right.
So I got to break that cycle for myself. And so that's how I got my first job. And then I got picked up at Microsoft right at the time when I got my work permit. So I got super lucky. And that's how I first got my official job at Microsoft.
So talk a little bit about what it was like working through the Magnificent Seven. And then, talk also about what you were doing at Google.
My first role was at Windows Mobile. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
So that's where I was, many years ago. That was my first sort of official job. And then very quickly, the manager I worked with, after he was impressed with my work ethic, and he moved to Amazon. So he took me with him to Amazon, built the entire search and ads org from grounds up. It was early Amazon days, very hard. And, so I was the only recruiter at Amazon who got outstanding rating year over year for many years in a row. And then after I did that for about 7.5, 8 years at Amazon, I got picked up by Meta. I was their first recruiter for the Seattle office. But the Meta role after was I quit that in 1 month. So it was my first time. I was the first recruiter, but I left that in 1 month. I was expecting my first child then. And there was a lot of like Menlo Park sort of like travel. Which I thought that obviously it would be, but once I accepted the job, I thought that this is going to continue for a very long time. And I wasn't just in that state, and I was like, this might not work out for me. And so interestingly, Amazon's, my VP that I supported, Paul Curtis, he and I would constantly be in touch. So we started he's like, how are you doing? Are you settling in well at Meta? And I said, well, Paul, I'm not really settling in well at Meta. I don't know. I think I did something. This isn't working out for me. He's like, why don't you come back? I said, but Paul, I don't want to come back into work. I'm going to be delivering a baby and all that. He's like, Neha, you can work from anywhere in the world. So after this is pre-COVID, when working from home wasn't even a thing. And so I had that opportunity to go back to Amazon and be a remote employee when there was nothing called working from home for the next 2 years. And then I went to Google Staffing and I joined their PhD team. I initially started with, supporting all of their North America software engineering team and the PhD work. And then I moved into Google Brain, where I hired all of their PhDs for different orgs within the Google Brain, like robotics and AI and machine learning, all of that. So I was supporting Jeff Dean, and that's where I worked for about 7.5, 8 years up until a year and a half.
So now you have this fantastic career, it's a corporate career, and then suddenly you kind of decide, this is not what I want. And you kind of in some ways went back to your design roots, in some ways. So talk a little about why that happened and what are you doing now?
But then I think it was a blessing in disguise, because what happened a year and a half ago, right after sort of COVID, the economy, so Google Brain and all of Google Staffing, they laid off 12,000 people. That was their first layoff at Google. And my role was impacted. So all of the senior recruiters within that org, me, my VP, my director, all of us got impacted. It was more about just reduction in force, because that's what Google was doing at that time, and not about your work at all, because we were all top performers. Mm-hmm. And so it was a big shock for me after, because I literally thought that I was indispensable for Google. I was just a recruiter. This sort of was my identity. I was known as a Google recruiter. I would go to all these conferences and I was doing a really good job. And then when this happened, I sort of felt sort of a loss. I felt like a divorce, I lost my identity, and I didn't know what I could do, because for 16 years, that's what I did. I was a recruiter. I was known as a recruiter. I did that. And so when that happened, I took some time off, and I sort of went inward, and I asked myself, what could I do? What is one of my strengths? What can I do other than recruiting? And then I went back up there when I was at Google, when I was at Amazon and all these companies that I would travel so much. A lot of the employees, my colleagues, my friends at these companies and Google especially would ask me often, "Hey, Neha, I love that jewelry piece you're wearing. I love that dress. Could you style me with that? Could you tell me where you bought that?" And so I went back to what I thought I was doing well. I like to dress up. I like to see other people dress up. I had a style sort of an eye. I had a design background. I could pick all the right things and put that all together. So that's where Atelier Maharani Bagh was born, which is my jewelry venture. And that's how I started. And it's been almost about a year now of me doing that. And after we have already established that online, so we have a large online presence. I do a ton of sip-in shops in Seattle. I do a ton of styling, and a lot of my clients are actually people I supported at Google and Amazon. So now I'm dressing up, VPs and product managers and directors who are going for TED Talks, or going for like these research conferences, who want to dress up, who have the means to dress up, but just don't know. They sort of like want to break that sort of this thing about a great sweatshirt and a denim, because that's what most techies wear, a gray sweatshirt and a hoodie. And they're like, well, we want to wear that, but we want to look nice as well. So how can you dress me up? So it's sort of the best of both. I understand the tech people really well because I worked with them for 16 years. I know what is too much for them or what is too little. I know what sort of a look they'd like to sort of like showcase when they're on a podium or a stage. I also know these people firsthand because I've been so closely working with them, and I know design. I like beautiful things. And so this is a sort of a merging of both these things. And one thing is also very interesting about my company, Atelier Maharani Bagh, Akhtar, is that we have a lovely logo. It's a dragonfly. The dragonfly, which tells you that, the untamed, the wild, the free-spirited, and also a very emotional story to it. When I lost my father about 3 years ago, I started seeing dragonflies everywhere. Everywhere. I see dragonflies if I'm sad. I see dragonflies if I'm happy. I see dragonflies in Italy. I see dragonflies in Iceland. I see dragonflies wherever I go. And so I kind of feel like it's my father's spirit sort of like supporting me and guiding me. And so that is sort of the logo of the brand. And we have pieces starting at $69 all the way up to $400. So it's a very affordable range up there. And it's what I'm very proud of to bring to the people, because, it's not about people's ability to pay, but it's about whether they want to pay, whether they see value in it. And nobody wants to break a bank to look pretty. And so now I'm dressing up all these people at an affordable price point. And I'm doing pre-holiday shopping for them at this amazing price point. So it's going really well. And so I'm finally glad that I'm finally getting back to what is truly sort of makes me happy. And because recruiting made me happy up there. It made me truly happy. And so now I'm going back to doing things which also makes me really happy, is to see people feel their best.
So you kind of mentioned, about strengths and working with your strengths. And some of the things that I stress in the work that I do on leadership development is the importance of strengths and not weaknesses. So talk a little bit about how did you discover your strengths and how are you showing up with that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Akhtar. So I remember when I was at Google, my boss would often say this term, would say, "Team, I'd like you to bring your whole self to work." And I really went back. I leaned into that thing that my boss would tell me all the time. Because after, typically what happens when I was sort of you could tell if I was at Google in the corridors, you could tell that Neha is coming because I was always dressed up. And typically in the tech world, people are not that dressed up, right? And so, I went back to my strengths where people would ask me hey, I like what you're wearing. I like what you're, sort of like this piece or that piece. And design is also my background, right? And so I caught that all together to, instead of learning a new skill, and like you say, managing to your weakness, I manage it to my strength. And my strength really is my eye for all these beautiful things. Yeah. So that's what I got together.
And, just for our listeners, again, I think that articulate your strengths, recognize your strengths, work from your strengths, because that is really what brings you the joy of showing up. Because really, you're showing up in the way you want to show up. So now let's just turn and talk a little bit about purpose. I mean, of course, what you were doing at Google was articulating your purpose, it was amplifying your purpose. But talk a little bit about why purpose is important to have and how are you showing up with purpose?
I think after I want to go back, to my family a little bit. When I came to America, but I come from a space of privilege. I came from a space of privilege. I got married into a space of privilege. So, you're always sort of like known as so-and-so's granddaughter, so-and-so daughter, right? And so for me, my purpose was really to be known for my work.
Yeah.
And so that I learned early on that regardless of who you can be, like what your background is, people now at this point onwards will value you based on what you bring to the table, what you can do for them.
Right.
And so very early on, that was like my key thing. Like I was one of the hardest recruiters. I really looked up to my work. My thing, every time I would go in for a review with my boss, and I would like go in would say like, this is my best foot. And that is what I think, like when no one is watching, when no one is telling you something to do, what do you do then?
Right.
And even this business, Akhtar, like, I could have gone and done many things, or I could have joined and gone back and done some family business and all that. But I wanted to be known for my own strengths, which is design and curating and making people look nice and pretty. But also like even in this thing, making this a little bit bigger than just a jewelry company.
Yeah.
We all have sip and shops because I'm all about meeting people and community, because that's what recruiting was. I would be at all these like fairs and things like that. I was really good at that, like knowing people, right? And so now I know people, their stories. So when I'm dressing up people, I could open a store at Bellevue Square, but I'm doing all of this more like a sort of a sip and shop, more personalized, because I want to know your story. I want to know, what would this jewelry piece mean to you? Why are you wearing this? Where are you going? Or sort of what kind of a look do you want to have? And not just an online business. So I think that purpose to me, Akhtar, is when no one is watching, when no one is guiding, nobody cares about what you're doing. What is that brings you to your true, authentic self? That to me is purpose.
So again, I want to just re-emphasize what Neha has just said is purpose actually allows you to discover your authentic self. And if you really focus on that, that then gives you the strength to do anything you want to do. So authenticity becomes such an important thing. So as we end our conversation, talk a little bit about your one golden nugget that you want to share, a piece of wisdom that you live by that you want our listeners to also emulate.
Absolutely. I have this as a tattoo as well, so that I can be reminded of it every day. Akhtar, and this is in French, but basically it means you just have one life. So you have to live it up. Don't care about what the world thinks. Don't care about what your parents are saying. Don't care about what your friends and family, your kids, whoever sort of this influence is. Listen to your own heart, because this is one life. You got to live it up. And I think like live big. You have to be ambitious for our jobs and our careers, but we have to be more ambitious for our lives. So I think that's my main goal. Be ambitious for your life.
I love that. I love the fact that it's not just about your career. We have this one life. And in that life, we show up first and foremost for ourselves. We show up for our family. We show up for our community. We show up for our faith. And then we show up for our work. So live your life. Thank you so very much. This has been so awesome. Again, to our listeners, purpose is that renewable source of energy that continues to drive humanity forward. So focus on your purpose, focus on your strengths, be authentic. You have this one life. Live it up. Thank you so very much. And again, till next time, thank you for joining Living with Purpose. Thank you, Neha, so much.
Thank you so much, Akhtar. It was lovely.